He joined me for Butcher and Blackbird and Leather and Lark. Now the third book is finally out. Today I'm chatting with Dylan about Scythe and Sparrow. We talk about how this was not our favorite book of the whole series, but there was lots of pretty good moments. Welcome to Busy Reading Romantasy, a video podcast that discusses books that merge elements of romance and fantasy while occasionally exploring other genres. We get to escape our world and dive deep into themes of good versus evil, power dynamics, and all of the delicious taboo topics. Curiosity and open-mindedness are a must. That being said, this is a podcast for mature audiences only and will contain spoilers. Your mental health matters, so be sure to check the trigger warnings of each book to decide if this is the right episode for you to listen to. Now, let's get into today's episode. Because you got this book right when it came out, didn't you?
Yeah.
So how long ago have you read it now? Was it came out early February?
It came out the 7th, I think. No, the 11th. Yeah, so the Tuesday after my birthday was when it came out. And then I finished it. When did I read it? I view book details. It took me like a week.
Okay.
That's just because I've been really busy. So
that is fair. That is fair. What, just out of curiosity, are you reading now?
The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller.
Oh, okay. How's that so far?
It's good. I feel like I'm gonna be sad.
Oh, okay. I was like, the way that you said it's good.
Because that's the situational irony of it all, right? Is that like we know how the story plays out if you know like Greek myth, right?
I don't.
So well, I know Greek myth.
Okay, fair.
And because of that, I know that it's not gonna end well. So it's a matter of how they do it, I guess, right?
Okay.
So we'll see.
Well, I finished Scythe and Sparrow this morning. Technically, no. Yeah, I did read the last chapter this morning because I went to the gym last night because I had a whole crumble cookie and then I felt very sick and I was like, you know what? Let's go for a little walk.
That's interesting thought process, but okay.
I really thought I was gonna vomit, and so I feel like I needed to walk it off, I guess, a little bit. So I went to the gym and I was listening to the audiobook. Dylan, I tried my hardest, and I just think I'm not an audiobook person. My brain cannot comprehend what's happening. I had to I couldn't look at what was going on around me. I'd had to look down at the little treadmill screen. Otherwise, I would just start losing what was happening.
Fair. Teach their own. Everybody's different.
I do like the accents, though, because I feel like a lot of people had accents that I would not have ever guessed. I mean, we know that the boys are Irish. That was delightful. But I will say I do like that part. So,
okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyways, we're going to get into it. As always, I kind of do like a speed run of the plot. So obviously there's very much spoilers ahead. And Dylan, please interrupt me with any thoughts, emotions, reactions as we go. So we start with Rose, who is doing tarot readings. And as someone who has recently gotten to tarot, I found that part delightful. That was actually really exciting for me to be able to track what was happening and like getting the meanings kind of as they were also explaining the meanings. And we start to get they're explaining how she is essentially helping women who are being abused by their husbands or partners. And she gets this guy's ID and ends up going to his house, attacks him, and this is where we get okay, wait, actually pause. I'm going to back up just a second because I will say I do love the trigger warnings list. There's you're not going to get a bland list. There's already so much emotion right off the bat, and it's fun.
Did you listen to that part in the audiobook?
No, I didn't. Should I?
Yeah, it's honestly probably the funnest part of the.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll do that, and then if it's impactful enough, I'll insert a clip of me here talking about it.
Okay.
um, but anyways, um, he ends up hitting her in the leg with a bat. She drink umbrella skewers his eyeballs, so we get eyeball stuff off the bat,
Mhm.
and she takes off. This was all in just like the first chapter. What were your thoughts of the start of this?
It gives context to what happened in Butcher and Blackbird, like like why she is the way that she is.
See,
Like,
I feel like it's been too long in between for
okay,
me with the other two because
so spoiler alert. Um, this book takes place over the span of the first two books and then after.
yes,
So, um, when we're introduced to her in the first book, her leg is broken.
that's right. Yeah,
And so this is explaining how that happened. She gets her leg broken because she tried to attack this guy to help this woman. And in trying to get away from him, she stabs him in the eye with drink skewers for the cocktail skewers.
fun
And
times.
we go from there. Yeah.
So, how do you say his name?
Fionn.
Fionn, right?
Fionn.
Is out for a run. He gets the little notification that there's movement at his practice. It is Rose breaking in. And he ends up calling 911, gets her help. He shows up. That is very impactful because she asks him for help. And he also finds the guy, Cranwell. I don't know why for my notes I just chose to put his last name forever.
That's all you need.
Yeah, exactly. He finds his license as well, so he already kind of knows off the bat that like something is up. Obviously, Rose's leg is too injured, and she gets kind of left behind essentially by the circus to heal up. And Fionn sweeps her up and is like, "Hey, come to my house. It'll be great." What a good sweetie.
Yeah. He didn't want to let her just fester in her RV in the RV park with the creepy kids.
Exactly, that would be very dangerous. Probably well, that would have been an interesting story, I think, on her part.
Mm-hmm.
A completely different story, but an interesting story
Yes.
nonetheless. So, they end up having a heart-to-heart about kind of Cranwell, that whole situation, and Fiona, interestingly, has to, like, fight the urge. He wants to go to him and, like, make this whole situation right. He does end up going over to Cranwell's house and is about to sneak in and do some damage when Cranwell's son ends up coming in the barn while like he was doing stuff. And so he was like, okay, sign from the universe, that's not going to happen right now.
Mm-hmm.
Rose eventually gets her stitches taken out, I believe, and this where she runs into a nurse, Naomi, who also has an abusive partner, big theme of this book. And she goes, this is where she goes to like she she ends up running into him.
Yeah, she's at a like an outdoors store, like a sporting goods
Yeah,
store,
yeah,
like a
yeah,
hunting slash fishing store, and she's buying a knife, and this guy's buying like fishing stuff, and
yeah,
he's like starts flirting with her, and he's like, "Oh, I could take you to this spot." Blah 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 blah.
yeah, yeah. And so what does she do? She hops into his car without him knowing. She's like hiding, which I love Rose. I admire her. I wish not necessarily in this context, I'm not hopping into random people's cars, but
Did
I
she randomly hop into his car? I thought she went with them, like flirting with him.
yeah, because she, like, put herself under the blanket and then her phone goes off when Fiona
Oh,
texts her, and that's
yeah.
when he's like, "What?" And then she hops out like,
Oh, yeah,
"Surprise!" And stabs him too.
yeah. Stabs him. Well,
Um,
stabs and kills him.
yes,
Yes.
exactly, and she's hoping, like, the car is, like, kind of rolling towards, like, a lake or river or something,
Mhm.
doesn't quite get there. So who does she call for help? Fionn. And I love this is where we get this like small inside joke around like she said something along the lines of like, well, you said if there's any trouble whatsoever. So like this kind of falls into the trouble whatsoever category.
Mhm.
Um, so he shows up and ends up helping her cover up this murder, essentially. Nothing like
Yep.
true bonding than
Mhm.
over committing crime together.
Yep. So this doctor who is sworn an oath to protect people is helping her cover up a murder while also knowing that she stabbed the other guy in the eye.
Yeah, yeah. This book, I mean, so this book on top of having just read Lights Out a little bit ago, has shown me that when it comes to fictional books that take place in like our earthly realm, murder just stresses me out because I'm like, there's no way you can get away with this. And then, of course, it's a book, so of course they get away
Well,
with it, but it just stresses me out.
it's like, um, what is it? Criminal Minds. They say like the easiest way to get away with murder is to like tell nobody, right? But
Yeah.
obviously, like in this, they tell the people that are close to them. And over the last two books, or like, okay, well, with Butcher and Blackbird, it kind of makes sense how they constantly get away with it because
Mhm.
they're serial killers, you know, they've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
I do think an aspect of this is just me. An aspect of the book that I think I would have liked is if like someone was onto them. But
Hmm.
obviously through other means that we find out later in this book, we find out why specifically like Lachlan and them get away with it in Leather and Lark, and then also why Fiona and them get away with it.
Mhm. I did also think that Fionn would turn to his brothers sooner rather than later. Again,
Hmm.
we see the struggle of his character,
Hmm.
so I understand why he didn't want to, but also, I don't know,
Yeah.
I guess. So anyways, that is taken care of essentially for the time being. And then we show up. Honestly, this was probably one of the most delightful parts in this whole book, in my opinion, is when we meet the Suture sisters, which is this
Yeah.
lovely uh crochet group. And Fionn, like it mentions when Rose goes to his house for the first time, there's like little crochet doilies and stuff like that. So he shows up to this group. Rose is just magically there, she's found out about it. And this is where they're like, "Oh, so what do you work?" She asks for advice because she wants to work on a sex swing. Amazing conversation. I think this was the
Hmm.
banter, the comedic relief that I needed, as because they really took her project to heart and were giving her like solid advice
Yeah.
that I think is just fantastic.
I think it was funny that he brought up that he thought it was a fight club at first,
Yes.
and then he showed up and it was just a bunch of ladies crocheting. So he's like, "Oh well, I'm here now."
Yeah, I like that attitude as well. Of just like, well, I guess let's see where this goes.
Hmm.
Um, and we start to get some of the context as well that she I don't know if this is when she brings up the like aqua tofana thing or maybe it's later, I don't know, but we start to get the context of like her basically wanting to provide the means of helping out women and
Hmm.
and freeing them who are in rough situations. One second. I left the door open, trusting that my dogs would go to sleep, and they did not, in fact. They sleep for hours, and I start talking, and they're like, actually, we're going to play right here. Okay. Anyways, we start to get some of her story pre like meeting Fionn about providing the means to free women. And we also get some of Fionn's backstory around Claire and how he proposed to her, but that failed. And kind of this idea that like he essentially kind of like secluded himself in life, and then now Rose is like definitely bringing some excitement back in there for him.
Yeah, he like basically left Boston because of this and was like, I'm just gonna exist out here in the middle of nowhere
Yes.
because my heart was broken. Yeah.
Do
Poor
you
Fionn.
I know. Do you remember where he lived? Where were they?
I think it's like
You know?
Nebraska.
Oh, okay. I don't think I've ever
Yeah.
been to Nebraska.
Because they yeah, I think logistically it's Nebraska, but then at the same time, if you think about it, well, we'll get there. I'll bring it up when we get to the part of the story.
Okay. I'm curious.
Okay.
Okay. Now they are so bonded. They're like watching trashy reality TV show, and he has all of his thoughts around like what contestants he wants to win and whatnot. When Barbara the raccoon breaks into his practice, and they're gonna team up, stop Barbara. Uh They're
Mhm.
going in for the kill, and at one point, Rose, she's like talking, and he's just trying to get her to be quiet. Barbara launches himself right at Fionn's face. Rose throws the towel right over him to try to get it like taken care of. Um, Again, a great comedic relief scene, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
This is also where Matt shows up to the practice, having seen Fionn's vehicle in the parking lot. He texts Rose to hide, and he shows up essentially saying that, kind of he knows that Rose is staying with him, that, just kind of causing some trouble, adding to the pressure.
Hmm. She hides. You find out that Matt is Fionn's patient, actually.
Yes.
And you're just like, oh, that's complicated because he
Yes.
obviously wants to hurt him. So he's, you know,
Yeah. A delicate line to kind of play of like, I feel like it's a big game of like, okay, who knows what information, like
hmm
very much Matt keeps trying to like test to get people to kind of like, he adds pressure to be like, to get them to kind of, I guess, confess to what's going on.
hmm
um so now we get, after all of that, we learn about moving on from the Suture sisters to the Blood Brothers, and this actually is the Fight Club.
yeah.
And Fionn goes and essentially helps stitch up all the men who fight there. Of course, Rose shows up again, and yet again, what I started mentioning earlier is like, I just admire the kind of connections she can make with everybody. Like, I just feel like
hmm
she has that kind of outgoing personality that can get anyone to really like, I guess, open up in a sense. Because she is joking around with one of the fighters as Fionn is patching him up, and he gets a little bit jealous when the guy was like, "Oh yeah, like come swing by the shop or whatever." Like the kind of level of familiarity between them already,
hmm
and eventually a giant fight breaks out, and what Rose ends up like under the table or something. She's like too close to it, and Fionn goes crazy, beats up the guy to defend her honor.
Yeah, but she's like, I'm fine.
Yeah,
Like
it was a bit
he
unnecessary,
just
but
beats the shit out of that guy. It's just like, I'm good.
yes. True. Yeah. I think some things have been building up inside of him. And that's kind of like the common theme too of like, he keeps alluding to, he has this darkness, right? And he doesn't want to like go over the edge or like let it out, or be, I guess, a certain type of person, which is why he's kind of built such an insulated, like perfect looking life.
hmm
Yeah. So this is where we get to the part where Sloane and Rowan show up again, going back to the first book where she has the
Yeah.
footprint on her forehead. They had just uh duked it out with one of their kind of annual games, and
They duked it out and drove pretty beaten and battered from almost dying to this guy from Texas to Nebraska. That's what I was
Yeah,
going to
hang
bring
on. Okay. Wait, let me look at a map real quick.
up.
How long of a drive is that? Did you look
I
into
think
this?
I think they were near Odessa, Texas to
That feels like a long road trip regardless.
it's like almost 13 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That is a good point.
just saying.
Yeah.
They drive. They drive.
Huh. That feels like a very long drive. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, they show up regardless. Magically,
Mm-hmm.
they've made it there.
Yep.
And he helps kind of patch up Sloane as she needs to get her, like, was it shoulder popped back in, I think, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um And this is where we get more of Rowan kind of grilling him about not trying anything with Rose yet. And he's like, well, I don't want a relationship. And he's like, who says you need to have a relationship to just like have some fun? And again, he's like, oh no, can't do that. Can't have fun. He like
Yep.
almost goes to her door, but then he doesn't. He leaves.
Mm-hmm. And then he goes to bed, and we get the other side of Rowan and Sloane's first time in Butcher and
True.
Blackbird, which is just him laying in his bed wanting to die because he just hears them going at it in the other room.
That's a good point. And I'm glad that was also added because I feel like that would really annoy me.
It's like, go somewhere else. Like,
Yeah, right. You come into my home.
yeah,
I'm very particular about my sleep, so
yeah.
that would be.
And
Uh,
then they leave.
they leave, and oh yes, okay. Rose starts like itching in her cast with a crochet hook, and Fion's like, "No, you can't do that. That's so dangerous. You could hurt yourself." And so him being the good doctor he is, blows on it a little and is
Mm-hmm.
like, is that helping? And Rose is like, kind not really, but like kind of like more.
It's helping
And
something.
that's where things finally get hot and heavy for them. Thank goodness. The tension had been dragging on quite a bit. And Fionn being Fionn, he's like, you know what? First, pause. Let's have some rules. And you get the typical, like, okay, no kissing on the mouth, no PDA,
No sleeping in the same bed.
no sleeping in the same bed. Yeah. Just annoying. I don't know. Annoying to me, I guess. It's like, what can possibly go wrong with a whole friends with benefits situation?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anyways,
And then he goes to town.
yeah. Oh yeah. That that no complaints here. I remember I was reading that when I was on the treadmill. And luckily it's at my house because I was like, good lord.
Yeah, what does he say? He said, if you want me to keep going, keep your eyes on me. And I was like,
Yeah.
hmm.
Yeah. I okay. Well, I'm gonna bookmark it for now so we can get through the rest of the plot, but I would like to come back to the spicy scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do have some thoughts about those, like overall.
Okay.
Um, so they have fun.
Yeah.
And oh yeah. I I was debating about how much detail I was gonna go into this. Um, yeah, okay. Anyways. So
Now I want to know what you're gonna say.
well, just like the notes that I leave for myself, because this is where she's like, "Oh, I have a cum kink, like in me, on me,
Oh,
everywhere, all around me."
yeah.
Like, okay, cool, fun. Um,
That's a first in this book series.
true. I
Yeah.
do like again something a little different. We haven't seen that quite yet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I like how off the bat he's willing to break all of the rules, but she's the one that gets up and is like, okay, good night. Mike leaves.
Yeah. Well, it's like the typical thing because she probably, when they were setting the rules, was like, "Oh, if he says there are no rules, then I don't care." But the moment that he sets it, she's like, "Well, I'm going to make a point."
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And oh, okay. So next we flip to they're flying to Boston for the opening of the restaurant. He's fingering her on the plane. That personally would stress me out. That's just me, I guess. But like, and
Fair.
fun for them, I guess. And he's
Fair.
like, we're gonna be descending soon. You gotta hurry up.
Yeah.
I guess I'd assume they're in first class.
Doctor money. Yeah.
Yeah. Because otherwise, if you're in the back like the rest of us,
The cheap seats.
there's a third person in the row just trying to like mind their
Now,
business.
now, I imagine that he's in the aisle, she's in the window, and there's one person in betwin them, and he's just like
He's just like
over.
stretched up.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. That would be hilarious. And okay, so they get to Boston. The hotel that they're at, the lady was like, "Sorry, we only have like one bed." He's being really weird about it, but like it's one of those things where they've both created the rules. Neither of them wants to stick to the rules, but they don't want to let the other person know that, so they're going to stick to the rules or whatever. Rose is kind of a little hurt. I would be hurt as well if we're like, "Okay, we can be adults. Is this that much of a problem?"
Yeah.
And this is where he comes out too, where he's like worried that his darkness is unpredictable and it's going to be a problem.
Okay. Yeah.
And she's just like, okay. So what what were your thoughts around his kind of like, again, most of the story is him, I feel like, trying to like hold himself back, of worried being like maybe overtaken by these dark thoughts or wants or emotions or whatever. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that's also because we don't get the reveal of like why until later, right?
True. Yeah.
So I think it's kind of the payoff is good, but like leading up to it, you're just kind of like, but why? Like, if you have these same emotions, like, are you just a doctor so you don't end up like your brothers? Like, because
Right.
they seem fine with it, and I'm sure they'd be fine with you doing whatever you wanted to do if that was
Yeah.
you. But like, why are you so adamant about like I'm not gonna be like this? And then obviously, yes, later on we find out why. But
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we get Rose's POV as she's like bonding with Sloane and Lark, and they're pressing Lark about Lachlan at this point because they're kind of going through their little drama. Um,
that's that. I think that part when the restaurant is happening is when we have the balcony scene from Leather and Lark when they realize that they know each other.
yeah, yeah.
And they're like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, exactly. Then the whole mess with like Rowan and Sloane happens, and
Mhm.
it felt like, again, we know how that turned out. But that was just kind of like Rose like chilling in the room waiting for all of them to.
I like how she basically just finds out that like something's off
Yeah.
in general. Like
Yeah.
everyone's really cool with like a lot of weird things, and like, oh, he got hurt, but it's fine. It's
True. Yeah. They're just like, oh, patching them up. We're good to go. Like on to the next.
yeah.
Uh, and oh, so but when he does show up, we got some devouring going on. She goes after him. He returns the favor. Great times.
Hmm.
Um, and then when they are back, she ends up running into uh Cranwell. She's getting her cast off.
Yeah, getting a cast off.
And he's actually visiting his wife, who had a fall.
Mm-hmm.
Surprising.
Yeah.
And he hints that they found the other guy's truck, the one that they had murdered. So she is kind of out of it. I did like the moment, I didn't take note of it, but when Fionn's like explaining everything and then he like starts the saw and she's like, what the fuck? And he's like, you just said okay, like, are we good?
Oh yeah, for the
But
cats.
yeah, but she can't really like talk about it because there's also nurses in the room. And she's like, I gotta go. So then we skip to like a month later. Throughout the rest of this book, we get quite a few time jumps.
Skips. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a month later, and we get Fionn visiting. He goes to visit Rose. She's back at the circus, and he like shows up, goes to see her in his at her trailer. She's in a robe, like all sweaty. There's a man running on the treadmill. It's a very weird situation. Fionn at first thinks like he's interrupted something and is about ready to leave. I felt for him. That is a very sad situation to walk into to like feel that ever.
No relationships, right? He didn't want one.
I know. That's the problem. That is the problem.
Yep.
Anyways, so they basically, he was like this drug dealer and everything, and so she gave him a bunch of drugs hoping that he would kind of just like off himself, and instead he was like Superman ready to run a million miles. So Fionn gets him to go running outside, and he essentially impales himself on a fence. So long story short, he did take care of himself in a way. And okay, that's when we get more of the background around. She brings up Julia Tofana, who did the Aqua Tofana, who basically gave women the means to poison their husbands. And he steps up like a good person and is like, I'll help you deal with this. And he goes and like talks to the cops and gets that sorted and everything around there. Afterwards, they play a fun game of chase throughout the carnival, which that sounds delightful. That sounds like so much fun, especially when it's like not open, like if it's not crowded with people. Also, it could be very creepy, but I was very much getting like HD Carlton. I was ready for them to like go in the fun house, Maze of Mirrors style. They didn't, essentially, but like, you know.
They did do something.
They did. This is where we get to the butt plug cotton candy situation.
Yes.
To put it lightly, right? So this is where my germaphobe comes out, because he takes it out of her, right? He does wash it off. They do mention that, but then it goes in her mouth, and
he washed it off. What do you mean?
I know, but germs are invisible, and I cannot.
He is a doctor. He washed it thoroughly.
He had some
you know that he was like in the crevice.
I know. But also I imagine them like they're getting all excited, and she's like, wait, let's make cotton candy. They turn the machine on, and you have to wait a few minutes. So they're just like sitting there waiting for it to like get going.
He's messing with himself.
Like, anyways, yeah, that was fine. Like, not.
It didn't ruin things for me, but
no.
Yeah.
No, I also, I guess, would have appreciated the cotton candy foresight, but still, I would have been no for me. I've been like, no. You can put it aside and use it later, but like, I'm not putting it in my mouth. Anyways, it's fine. I get it. He's a doctor. He can clean things off fine. But okay. Anyways, moving on from that.
Suspend your disbelief.
They continue to like dance around the rules. That is literally the only sentence I wrote for that chapter. Whatever happens. Cranwell shows up yet again. And this time he shows up at the carnival where she's working. And the fighting starts. She like turns off all the lights in her tarot booth. And
actually, so this is when she stops at the carnival. She's working at the haunted house.
That's right.
In Boston. She decided to stay in Boston.
Correct.
Because she's starting to fall for him. Well, fall for him, but she's like, I'm gonna stay in Boston because I could be close to Sloane, and that can be close to Lark because like they became friends.
True.
And
Yeah,
she's
yeah.
doing like this haunted house thing, which definitely reminded me of like Satan's Affair and
Yes.
that all
Yeah.
that. And like you said, she's working the haunted house, the tarot at the haunted house, and he
Yeah.
shows up and the fighting starts.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, because okay, so I guess we'll get to that in a second, but like the way that I pictured both of those two scenes of Satan's Affair and this one, I like the same exact thing basically played in my head.
Yeah,
Um, but which is interesting because both of those haunted houses had an upstairs, and I don't think I've ever been in a haunted house that had an upstairs.
I have.
Really?
But that's also because I live in a town that has one of the biggest haunted houses in the country.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. Okay. Anyways. um lost where I was.
They were fighting her and Matt Cranwell.
Yes. So she is working the tarot booth, and like she makes the lights go out. They're fighting. He chases her essentially into the haunted house, and that's where we get the kind of Satan's Affair vibes.
But first, before they get to the haunted house, she hits him in the back of the head and knocks his fake eye out. Or no,
True. Yes.
knocks his other eye out. Like his
Yeah.
other eye's like bulging out, and he's like, "I'm gonna fucking kill."
It's always eyeball stuff with these
Yeah,
ones. And then Fionn magically runs into her. Well, no, he saw her run into the haunted house. He finds her in the haunted house.
yeah, because I think he went to go visit her.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And they keep it going. Cranwell like catches up to them, and surprise, surprise, Fionn actually turns around and stabs him. And it's in a room with a strobe effect that also takes a picture. Like, what great timing. Um,
hmm
and so he essentially kills Matt, and
so
then
yeah, he stabs him and then he picks him up and puts him on a meat hook.
yeah,
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 and
because you
then
got to make it part of the decor just in
yeah, then
case.
he well, and like Matt's dying on the meat hook, and he's like, "I'm gonna." He's like, "You're never gonna fucking touch her." Blah, 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 blah. Yeah,
Yeah, but they're just friends, not a
yeah,
relationship. He doesn't want a
just friends,
relationship.
just friends by
Uh,
the way.
yeah. And so this is where he calls Leander to come help clean up the kill. And I guess that's where I was like,
We're missing a crucial part.
uh,
They fuck before he calls it. They fuck with Matt Cranwell's dead body on a meat hook.
I feel like I blasted through this maybe slightly too fast.
Yeah, Matt Cranwell's dead body is on a meat hook. They close the
Dang.
haunted house and then they
Yeah.
fuck in that
Oh
room.
yeah, because they were like, "Oh, anybody could come in," and he's like,
Yeah,
"I don't care."
yeah. And then they close the haunted house after they sleep together, and then he calls Leander after
Yeah.
making her leave.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
because he didn't want him to know, obviously. And I guess that's where I was just like, I guess no matter what I have been through, I would call a sibling before a sketchy
Uh,
person. But
okay,
like,
so my thought process in it is that he knows Leander's criminally connected
yeah,
because Lachlan worked for him.
yeah,
And so he already knows that Leander can make it go away. Not only the body, but he can make sure that the cops don't ask questions, stuff like that. So I think that's why he went to him. Because I think even if he went to Lachlan first,
hmm
right? Lachlan still would have went to Leander because
oh,
Leander has the connections. They don't,
oh,
right?
okay, okay. I guess my thinking was like, oh yeah, Lachlan's dealt with this. Like he could just
Yeah.
clean it up
Well,
real quick. But
like
I guess
Lachlan
there's
would know.
more
Yeah.
needed to be involved.
Yeah. Like if he called Rowan, Rowan
Yeah,
would probably just be like, fuck it, leave him. Like,
yeah. Good luck.
yeah.
Yeah. No, okay, that makes sense, I guess. But I don't know. Anyways.
I get it. I think like the Lachlan call should have happened and then Leander gets brought in,
Yeah.
but obviously he makes the choice and
Yeah.
then
Well,
of
it
course, yeah.
makes sense. It serves its purpose.
Yeah.
So Leander shows up, and with the little psycho he is, he sees intestines and he's like, I really want a hot dog right now. I'm a little hungry.
What a weirdo.
But he helps clean everything up. He does notice, was it fingerprints? A smaller
Boot
set of,
prints.
okay, he noticed that like there was another person involved.
Yeah.
So like he kind of makes mention of that. And basically after all that's cleaned up, Rose is still planning to go back to the circus, but that's where Lark disappears. And we knew.
Well, prior to that, before we get to that big thing, Leander blackmails Fionn into working for him
Correct.
because he goes, I dealt with this, but if you don't work for me, I'm also going to give the authorities all the stuff that she's been doing because I know that she's been killing these people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's like, okay, I'll do it. And he's like, you can't tell Leander says you can't tell your brothers
Right.
because they're crazy and they'll show up and deal with it.
Yeah. Yes.
And we also find out that Leander knows that Fionn was the person that killed their father, not
Yes.
Lachlan.
Yeah. Yeah. So he has to go work for him for 7 months. And again, he kind of plays this like, okay, we can't be together. This is not going to work. And so Rose is like, okay, I guess I'll go back to the circus. Like, which is also heartbreaking because she, like we said, she kind of got away from that in a sense and was like putting down roots in Boston and getting close to literally everyone.
She's like, I'll give you your keys back, Lachlan.
Yeah. And then that's where Lark disappears.
Yep.
That whole scene, which that's where like Rose is like, I love you, and then like runs away because she's gonna go help.
Yeah.
Because more happens in between. Like she goes and meets Lark for a coffee,
And she left her tarot deck.
Yeah, she's essentially gonna go. She had planned to leave without saying anything to Fionn, and the good old tarot deck who had other plans. So he was like, okay, I can pick you up and then I can drop you off with Jose. You can go back to the circus. And then that's where they get the call in the car around Lachlan's like, have you seen Lark? And they were like, oh, we already left. So that's where that whole scene where he's like working on the dog. I forget the dog's name.
Bentley.
And he's like, I don't want to be a vet.
Yeah.
And
don't die on me.
Yeah, exactly. And so Rose takes off. He ends up following. I do think is interesting what I took from it, again, being fascinated with the tarot cards, because originally Rose pulled 3 cards, the last one being death. Death is actually my favorite card because it very rarely means like an actual physical death. It's more like rebirth, like something is ending and then something new is going to begin. Anyways, I digress. But that was like the 3rd card. And then those same cards spill out when I think I pictured him in the car, but I don't know.
I think he gets in the car to take Bentley to the thing.
Okay, that makes sense. I feel like sometimes my brain be making up things and then I get nervous that it's not an accurate depiction of what's actually happening. And those same 3 cards pop out. This is why I love tarot, because sometimes it really do be like that. Like you can ask the same questions and sometimes like the same things will be popping out. I did a reading for my friend the other day, and before I finished the question, I was just shuffling and a card popped out, but I hadn't finished the question, so I put it back in the deck and then I kept shuffling, and then the same card ended up being like it ended up flipping later. So I was like, haha, you were. So anyways, I digress. But
I think the other thing that's kind of like, because in Mother and Lark we get the whole I love you and she leaves with Lachlan. And then in this book we get his side of it where she says I love you and leaves with him. And then he's like working on the dog. And then he's like, I need to tell her that I love her. And then he's like running after her with the dog. And then as he gets out, like they're already leaving.
Yeah.
And he's like, Rose. And then.
Yeah. And at this point, the death card, it was originally the 3rd card she drew. Now she mentioned that, when he saw it, it was in the middle. So for me, that seemed like it was moving up. We were getting closer to that being the more like pivotal event because we know from the second book that she gets shot.
Yeah.
Terrible. She's dying.
Mhm.
Like, the brothers are all having a heart-to-heart because that's when they find out that, like,
That's when Fionn confesses that he killed
yeah,
the dad.
yes. So, like, that's all out in the air, and then Rose, they, like, get into an ambulance, and Fionn's, like, trying his best to save her because obviously he doesn't
Mhm.
want her to die.
Meanwhile, he's ghosting Leander's calls.
I know, and Leander is like, he finally, like, answers, and he's like, "All right, like, we're gonna have a car for you there at a certain time. Like, you do have to come. You don't
Yeah.
get an
To
option."
Croatia, by the way.
Yes. Crazy. And at so Sloane and Fionn end up talking,
Mhm.
and she essentially gives him an address through her, like, the work that she does, that he was basically like, send me anything and I can get it to Rose with, like, whatever level of discretion it needs to
Mhm.
be, basically kind of giving him a way to contact her. And they also note that the lover's card is, like, flipped over at that moment.
Mhm.
She's still unconscious, and that's where he admits that he loves her and kind of
Mhm.
gives her a whole, like, goodbye thing that she's not even awake for, and he has to turn around and leave.
Yeah.
Ugh, ugh.
Uh, uh,
And ugh, grow up. Why does she have to almost die for you to be
well,
like,
in
I
in
love you?
fairness, he was trying to tell her before that happened,
Yeah, fair. Correct.
but
But
Lachlan was out of his mind, so he's
okay, fair, fair, fair. So instead, he starts sending her letters with associated tarot cards. I loved this. That was so
I
sweet.
I would say this part of the book is probably my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like the letters. I'm just a sucker for that type of romance. So it's like I'm writing you and I love you, and even if you don't respond, and well, like obviously not like obsessive, like I
Yeah,
love
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Like it's like he knows she has feelings, but it's hard, and like he
Right.
doesn't know if she's actually gonna respond to him. And
Well, and, like, what a sweet way. I think that also shows an amount of love to, like, say, like, this is something that you do and I'm, like, learning more about it as
yeah, that
well.
too.
There's a lot of cards in the tarot deck too. So, like,
It's a
I
lot of
can only
letters.
imagine working through all of those. Um, and he always says he loves her at the end of the letter. I think this is like this is where we get another time skip. Like, essentially, I mean, it alludes to the fact that he's, like, slowly sending her these letters,
Mhm.
and we get to a part where Jose, the ringmaster of the circus, is kind of like, Rose is, she's doing good, she's stabilized, she's, like, back in everything, and he's kind of like, what are you doing? You're here, that's great, but
You're not here, yeah.
exactly. Um, Also amazing in the audiobook. I guess I didn't put it together that he would have such an accent.
Yeah.
But this was like the last 3 chapters were the only 3 that I, like, actually listened to the audiobook version, and I was like, "Oh, wow, Jose, okay." Um, he also mentions that Lucy Cranwell actually had came looking for her at the
Mhm.
last, stop, which is nice. Oh, and, like, I didn't put it in my notes, but, like, Naomi was actually doing really well too, and
Mhm.
that was, like, a whole thing that, they were
She's
doing better.
doing good.
Not an abusive situation, surprisingly, they're finally flourishing,
Yeah.
and, her next letter is the star, which is his favorite card, actually.
Mhm.
And he said when he pulled the deck, like, that was the first card that he got to. And he says that he's, like, waiting for her at a specific location if she would like to come. And of course, he
Mhm.
loves her. Did you have any hopes for their, like, inevitable meetup. Like this obviously is alluding to like they're gonna have a reunion and things are like they're gonna finally get to be together. Was it
No,
what
what
you
happened?
expected or
What happened is exactly what I expected,
okay.
honestly.
Okay. Okay. Fair. Fair. Yeah, so she shows up and of course it's a little like, I don't know, awkward in the beginning of just like kind of realizing they've been apart for so long and one thing led to another. Um he reads her another letter that he wrote, and she actually reads him one of hers because she had been writing letters back
That's
to
that
him.
that's what got me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I when he's, like, turned around and she starts talking like she's reading the letter, and he's just like she loves him and, like, she's loved him this whole time, and I was
Yes.
like,
Uh, I did not tear up, but it was very sweet.
"I'm sensitive, okay?"
No, that's fair. There's no judgment. I cry all the time
It's
with love
kinda
scenes.
like, for example, today, um, it's the scene in The Great Gatsby movie when she's like, "I'm certainly glad to see you again," and he's like, "I am too," and it's playing, like, Lana Del Rey, and I was just like,
Fair, fair. We love
It's
a
been
man who feels his
it's been 5
emotions.
years, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, no,
And
absolutely.
then
And
this, it's been, over a year.
yeah, yeah, a lot of stuff going on. Um, and uh, basically, because she had started writing the letters and she didn't have anywhere to send them to,
Uh-huh.
and they decide they're ready. They're gonna try again, and I do think it's sweet that they continued like communicating via letters every day and like what a beautiful way to communicate because I always joke that I really struggle with my words, and especially where like maybe intense emotions are involved. I just think letters are a great way to just kind of like be able to put it all out there. The other person can read it whenever they're ready, or like it is not so as intense that I think face to face can be, but like still just as beautiful to like pour your heart and soul out into.
Yeah.
Mm. And this being the very last chapter, we get that he is essentially planning to propose.
Mhm.
Oh.
Yep.
Uh, then we get like a whole bunch of there's two epilogues and then a bonus chapter.
Mm.
So getting through those first one, Rowan is dressed like a dragon again. He's upgraded his little soul
Dragon
costume.
outfit,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Love that he chose to wear that for the entire uh drive, 6-hour drive that they had.
Mhm.
Um,
And
which
what is it? Paint? Actual paint?
yeah, oh yeah, he put actual paint on and then was very concerned that it was never gonna wash off. Um, and basically they're like they're heading to a cabin to play their annual game and he's like, "But I wanted to chase you through the woods."
Yeah. But what I do think's interesting is that the annual game has upgraded, if you realize that.
What? Because everyone's involved?
Yeah, because now everybody's
Oh, yeah,
involved.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
Lachlan's like, "No, I don't have a head start. She didn't give me any information."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's Lachlan, Lark, Rowan, Sloan, Rose, and Fionn are all
Mhm.
in on this now. And I honestly I think Fionn's just there to make sure like if they get hurt, like they're
Yeah,
okay.
true, true.
But I think that Rose might actually be involved
Yeah, I could see which imagining all of them descending on
on
one
one
target, like the
person.
chaos. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, they don't even know what they're about to face.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, so like Lachlan and Lark show up, and then Fionn and Rose, and that's where Fionn also proposes to Rose in
Mhm,
front of everyone.
mhm.
Very sweet, very sweet. Then we get the second epilogue, which I think is interesting. I guess I'm interested on your opinion.
I this might just be me.
Yeah.
I think that this might be her setting up whatever her next series is,
Okay, that's what I
right?
felt too. Because I was like, "Who the heck is
Because
Autumn? Why is this
well,
here?"
she's the girl that they saved in Texas in
Yeah,
Butcher and
yeah.
Blackbird, and she's taken it upon herself where I'm gonna become like Sloane. and I'm gonna kill people.
Yeah, that's fair. The murderous
and
web just continues.
yeah, and it's in that we find out that, like, because people are like, oh, like you said, like, oh, murder, and they just like, how is it so easy for them to just get away with? But going back to the whole thing when Lark got taken, they call Leander, and Leander handles all of it. He handles the cops. He handles the guy that showed up to kill her. Like, you know,
Yeah,
that's because they're connected, and that's all it is, really.
fair. Well, text me or I'll text you as soon as we get
Yeah, if
the
we
heads up that that's
well, she did say that she is writing a new series, but I don't know if it's like I don't know if she's going to
yeah,
visit this later down the
yeah,
line after that. I think it'd be interesting because I think that like, and I honestly think that if because we have that thing where like Sloane turns around and sees her,
yeah,
right, and then they're just like they go their separate ways, right,
yeah, yeah.
and so I think that like it's it reminds me of the fucking the meme where it's that guy in the woods. It's like the bearded guy, and he like looks over and he's like
Yeah.
that thumbs up. But um I feel like it could be interesting. I do think that if she does it and it's still in that world that like we don't need them in the books at all. Like maybe mentions of them in like the newspaper or not newspaper, you know what I mean? Like on social media or
Like the
like
main cast of
yeah, like
yeah, yeah.
the
That makes
Boston
sense.
Butcher Strikes Again or
Yeah.
like the Orb Weaver, you know, like all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like that type of stuff, or like tales of that, or even still, like I do think like in the beginning, like for the overall trilogy, I just think it would have been interesting if there was a POV of somebody that was onto them, like maybe not people
Yeah.
specifically trying to kill them, but someone trying to solve all of this, right?
Right. Right. Or like
So
noticing that there's like some sort of a pattern or
yeah,
connection or something, you know? Yeah.
yeah,
That makes sense. Yeah. And I agree. That's why I wanted your opinion
because
because like
it feels like there's no stakes, if you know what
yeah.
I mean.
Yeah.
Like in the second book, there are stakes because this guy's trying to kill Lachlan and Lark, right?
Mhm.
But like that obviously didn't like nobody got hurt. Well, I mean, Rose got hurt, but you get what I
Yeah.
mean. Like it's always and there's no like which uh, I'm gonna say this now for those of you who read romance books and dark romance and stuff like that. I don't expect any of the main characters to die, right?
Right.
I just come from the world of fantasy where like some like these authors don't care and they'll just
Yeah.
kill
That's
people.
fair.
Like
Yeah.
um and I feel like when there are more emotional stakes with that, like it can drive certain things because like there's ways to do it, right? So like
Yeah.
there's doing it with a purpose rather than just fridging a character because you're like, I'm just gonna make this person suffer.
Mhm.
Like so while I think that like because this is more in the Ruinous Love Trilogy, Butcher Blackbird, Leather and Lark, and Scythe and Sparrow, I think falls more into the spectrum of dark romance comedy, right?
Mhm.
Rather than like dark romance, right?
Right. Yeah. No, I agree
So
with that.
I think that's why there's probably not like high stakes, which is
Yeah.
fine. I just think that like even if there was like a hint of like, oh, we're being investigated, you know, like that would have been like, okay. Or like maybe Leander just gets tired of him and he's like, meh.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. Um yeah, and then essentially the last like bonus chapter is them officially testing out the sex swing. And of course they were
version,
like,
version 1.0.
yeah, yeah, exactly. They were like, okay, we'll make a few more. And I could see them getting really oddly good at it and then starting like a little side business.
An Etsy shop.
Crocheted sex items.
Mm,
Yeah.
it's a lot of crocheting.
Yeah. But I mean, fun hobby, I guess.
Do what you love, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And you could customize it whatever color you want,
true,
all that,
true.
all that. Um, yeah, so I am curious overall, what did you rate this book? And then what were your thoughts on it compared to the first two?
I rated it 4 out of 5, and I still think Leather and Lark's my favorite out of the 3,
Fair.
um, for reasons. Uh,
Mm,
go watch the last podcast episode. Yeah, for reasons. I do think that the voice actors because I read and do the audiobooks. I think the voice actors did a phenomenal job in both of these books, Leather and Larkin, Scythe and Sparrow, like taking up that whole like this is what we're gonna do now. Because like at first I was like, oh well, what are we gonna do with like the other brothers' voices and stuff like that? But like Eric Nolan, the VA for the books, like he does a good job making their voices distinct between the three. Like they're distinct between the three, but you can tell that they're related, basically.
Yeah.
And so like I enjoyed it. I think possibly like a critique on like what may have been the reason why I didn't like this book as much as the other two is the first one is the first one. It's my first experience with it. It's fun. It's new. It's this game, right? And then this book, like while I loved the aspects of it when it came to like the romance portions of it, like not the sex scenes, but like the actual like at the end with the letters and stuff like that is my favorite part of that.
Yeah.
I think it's because this book is basically a retelling of the POV of the first two books from their point of view, right? Like
Right.
like going through that, and then we get to the end where we get their story, and we still get their story throughout the whole thing, and we see like what was happening while all that was happening. But I think it relies on a lot of the whole like, oh, well, we have to connect it to this, and we have to connect it to this. That way, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And I feel like Rose as a character is very strong, and so like I feel like we could have gotten a little bit more with like what she was doing prior to that, right? Like just a little bit more, like maybe a success story because obviously we learned the failure, and then I feel like if the payoff with because that's the other thing that you did miss was in that time that they're away or apart from each other was Fionn actually started fighting.
Oh yeah, that
Yeah.
is correct. Yeah.
At the Blood Brothers and was like undefeated and
Yeah.
like and he's like letting the monster out a little bit and like
Yeah.
it's satisfying him. But then it makes you question like yeah, he has this monster and yeah, he kills Matt, but like if you know that your brothers are okay with it, right? Especially after he talks to him at the end where they're like we forgive you and Lachlan tells him he goes you may have stabbed him. He's like but I'm the one that choked him and watched the life leave his eyes. Like he's like I did it. Like you know.
Yeah.
He's like, you just made it easier for me, basically. And I think once that understanding is reached, that like, just do what you want to do, right? Which he even talks about. He goes, maybe I will work for Leander and just live in Boston and have my own place there now. But because like obviously he's gonna end up doing stuff that he doesn't because he has to learn plastic surgery on the fly in Croatia, like you know.
Yeah. Right. Turns into a cosmetic surgeon.
Yeah. What about you?
Okay, after much deliberation, I actually gave it a 3 out of 5. Now, I will say
it's the germs, isn't it?
It's the germs. I just got caught up on that. No, I will say, obviously, ratings are a matter of personal opinion. This is not a
These are our
common
opinions.
genre I read.
Yeah.
And I think coming off of some really good fantasy books, jumping into this, I was kind of like, oh, like again, there's a reason I read mainly fantasy. And I agree with what you were saying as well of just like the first one felt really exciting usually when you're trying to understand what is possible in this world, like what, you know, who are the characters and such. And this one I just felt like I love Rose's character. And that was definitely, like, fun to play around, and there was moments that I really loved, but I felt like I kept wanting, like, more. Like, I wanted more of a reason why they couldn't be together, something like that, or, you know, um, even what I wanted, like, bookmarked and wanted to come back to as far as, like, the spicy scenes of, like, they were good, and especially the first one, because the first one is essentially breaking the tension of, like, they hadn't done anything together, and it was good, and I just felt like particularly underwhelmed, and I don't know if that was a lack of, like, overall tension. I don't know that I can maybe pinpoint why I just felt slightly over no, slightly underwhelmed overall with this book. Um,
I think it's because a lot of it, like they do have their spicy scenes, right? Don't get me wrong,
yeah,
but I feel like a lot of it is like glossed over.
yeah.
Right? She's like, he's like, I went down on her, she blew me, blah blah blah. Like in the same
True.
sentence, right?
Yeah,
It's like, and you're just like, okay, but like maybe I wanted that
yeah,
scene in detail, like
yeah.
so.
That is a good point.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of time skip too, so like it kind of it's like one of those things where like I talked about this in was it Iron Flame? I
Mhm.
talked about an Iron Flame where like there's a lot of parts of those books where like they just mention things, but it's been like months, and you're like,
Yeah.
what happened with that? And so it's
Yeah,
kind of like I think that's another reason, but
yeah,
just like plotting or pacing wise, maybe I think is what it is
yeah,
because while like Butcher and Blackbird, while it does take over the span of a few years, it it's built and then those like text messages happen, right? And like
yeah,
that stuff. So there's all this context to it. And then in Leather and Lark, like it's a contained story within a certain amount of time after the events of the first book.
yeah,
So it's like
yeah,
it's happening in real time and it's this and that. Whereas this one is like, we already know this happened. We want to know why it happened.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so yeah.
yeah. No, that's fair. And I think just the timing of what was happening in my personal life, and I was like, it just doesn't work like that. Never
Doesn't
happens
work
like that.
like
You don't
that.
go a
Yeah.
year without seeing someone, and then you're like, actually, I love you. Let's work on it.
Oh,
But
you know,
anyways,
there's that whole like right person, wrong time thing, I guess, that some people believe in.
yes.
Some people believe in. I know there's people that are like, there's never the right or wrong time if it's the right person. But you know,
Yes.
sometimes life just gets in the way. And when you have a murderous psychopath who
Yeah.
likes to make people smoothies and drink it and is like, you're gonna come work for me, you kinda don't have a choice. So
Yes. Yes. Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. So overall, like I said, there was elements that I really loved, and then just on a whole, zooming out, I agree. I've read like a couple books now that are a couple series that are similar, where like each book focuses on a different couple, and so like you have an idea that these things are going to happen, um, and yeah, I just feel like it was a lot of ground to cover, so you just maybe didn't get as
yeah.
much, I suppose. So, um, awesome. All right. Are you excited for any books that might be coming
Oh,
out, or like what do you
yeah,
want to?
actually.
Yeah.
March 13th, the cover reveal for the third Empire of the Vampire book is
Oh yeah.
releasing, and it's the final one. So,
Okay.
Empire of the Vampire was the first book by J. Kristoff. Empire of the Dam was the second one, and then the third one's called Empire of the Dawn. And the cover reveal comes out next Thursday. Yeah.
Ooh. Okay. When does the book come out?
Oh, not probably not for another like year.
Oh. Oh.
And
Oh.
then
Okay.
what Pierce Brown announced that Red God, the next book in the Red Rising saga, comes out next year finally. Because like people were like, he hasn't even given us a release date. Like,
Mhm.
and he's like, no, it comes out next year. And then he said the reason is because he's having printing problems that it's so big he doesn't know how he can print it into one book that it might get broken into two.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
When being big is just a problem. Ah, well, anyways, Dylan, thank you so much for joining me after a long
Always.
work day to chat
Yeah.
about this book. I was curious to get your thoughts of it. Ooh, okay. What was your favorite scene of this, actually? I'm just curious.
Mm, like overall or like a specific or like are you asking
Overall.
like overall when she reads the letter to him.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I figured that that was
Like I said,
the
I'm just a
case, but
sap.
that's a good thing to be, in my
Mhm.
opinion. I like that. But anyways, thank you for joining me. Appreciate it. We've done this
Always.
series, and yeah, That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
If you've made it to this point in the episode, thank you so much for watching. I'd be incredibly grateful if you showed some support either by following or subscribing, depending on what platform you're watching on, and leaving a comment. You can always follow me on Instagram at Busy Reading Romantasy or on TikTok at busy.reading.romantasy to see what I'm up to. You can also email me at busyreadingromantasy@gmail.com to tell me your thoughts, dreams, secrets, or if you just have any book and author suggestions you'd love me to cover. Grab yourself a good book, get cozy. I'll see you next Wednesday for a new episode.